So yeah, man, picking off on what happened yesterday at the gym. JMO, you'd say it from your perspective because I was just speaking and I was disregarded the whole world. So what's your interpretation? Tell Andre a little bit.
I noticed things were getting interesting when we all left the gym in our little posse, as we do, and we were leaving the gym. And as soon as we leave the gym, we notice that the lady who's usually sitting in the office comes out of the
Yesenia.
office, and usually she stays in there. She usually we wave at her, adios, buenas tardes.
Hasta luego.
Like we're all cute. This time, the lady actually came out of the office, and that's when I realized something was different. So she started talking to us, and immediately I knew what it was. Because
How did you
I
know?
just knew what.
Because your Spanish
I just
ain't that
knew.
good.
Well, I knew what it was when I heard a couple words she said, and I recognized a few of her words.
What did you?
but
Which
also
word?
Zapatos.
Martha said the same thing.
As soon as I heard zapatos, because she came out, and I just could tell she was kind of like had to say. She was talking a lot, so something was up, and I was like, "What could be anything? Like, what could be a thing we've done that's a problem? What could we have had an issue with?" And first thing was just like, "Oh, I know exactly what," because I remember when we were in the gym when I was doing the pull-ups and doing the push-ups, I saw her in the corner walking in because I was like, why is this person wearing jeans in the gym? And then I was like, oh, this is the lady that is at the front desk. I see her coming in and I see her walking to the other room, and I don't pay attention to what she's doing in the gym, but I tried to focus on the workout. But I did notice her, and I was very observant just because I was telling Farhan too, whenever I'm in the gym or a social environment, I always look for places. I look for people of interest, people that could be a threat, people that could be a companion. I just try and keep myself in a mindset of, okay, what could happen here? What are the possibilities here? Where are my exits?
Mindset of Soviet Russia.
Keep an eye on, and where are the baddies? I mean, that's like you got to find the threats, the compadres, and the baddies, and then you got to have that all kind of like balanced out. Because in a perfect world, you wouldn't have to worry about the threats, but in this world, it's important to keep a mind on it. You can just focus on the baddies, but I can't be solely baddie focused. So I had to look around.
Because there are no
One of the
baddies.
things I noticed was this girl. I know. There are no baddies.
That's probably why.
It's very easy when there's no baddies. I'm very focused because we have a gym that is a blessing, and they don't have a lot of distractions. Could be a blessing, could be a curse. I don't know. It depends how you look on it. But for Andre, for Andre and I, it might be frustrating. For Farhan, it's great. He's just like, perfect. I don't have to worry about nothing. I can just get my workout done. I'm like, oh man, I was hoping to meet a hot little Mexicana. But anyways, the big deal is we got in trouble for not wearing our shoes in the gym while we were doing pull-ups, push-ups, and of course, all of our Sumer unstoppable baller style training with our toes and making sure that we have ideal toe health.
Yeah, I wondered. I'm like, oh, do they make you wear specific shoes at the gym? But you guys are just not even wearing shoes at all.
We don't got no shoes, man.
What's interesting though is Andre, just to put things in perspective, Martha and I have been going to this gym for a month and a half now. No problems. Jameson's been going for 2 weeks, right? And no problems. But what happened...
I think I caused a ruckus.
Yeah, but what happened is yesterday, it was the second or third day where we were walking in the gym without shoes on, right? Usually in my mind, I am aware of the cocksuckers out there who are evil and are resentful, narcissistic, compassion, Jordan Peterson stuff, right? Which we know. And they haven't integrated their shadow, so they're just out looking for trouble and looking to, how can I beat this other guy? Like, how can I kill Abel rather than giving a better gift to God, right? It's that type of Cain mentality. So I'm aware of that. So I never walked around the gym. But now what's happening is, because we're doing all these different Sumer exercises, we have a slant board, so we have to go in different machines to like use it as a wall. And so now it's more noticeable, right? That we're barefoot. So yesterday, after all this time, she basically said, you have to wear your shoes, tennis shoes, because people are complaining because of health reasons, not safety, because safety makes more sense. Like, we don't want to drop dumbbells on our feet. But she said hygiene, health reasons. Like it's dirty.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that's what she said.
That.
That's what she said. And yeah, man, if that happened to you, Andre, what would go through your mind? What would your reaction be?
Yeah, first of all, I would be wearing shoes at all times. I'm barely
I
barefoot
told
even
you.
in my own house.
He would be like, "You guys do wear shoes?"
Yeah. But
the fuck, he would have been the guy. These fuckers aren't wearing any shoes, man.
well, I wouldn't care, but
I know.
But yeah, if I was confronted about something that I do regularly at the gym, just as a normal thing, I mean, geez, I would probably be a little pissed to start off, but yeah, I think when it comes down to them telling you that it's health reasons, like if I had to wear a mask still at the gym, I probably just would not. I'd probably have angst and go buy those useless masks where, there's like a square cut out or something. Like, I just don't care. Like, I'll do whatever I have to get past your stupid loophole because I don't agree with the rules, in that way. But yeah, if you drop a dumbbell on your toe, probably not going to be wearing shoes for the next month. Or you probably are.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was very interesting because you get a sense of why would someone care if we're not wearing shoes? Like, why would you care? I don't know. Jameson, did you think about this when you went back home? Did you contemplate or you forgot about it?
Oh, I definitely contemplated
You did?
it.
Okay.
We talked about it on the way back. And we discussed exactly why it'd be an issue because people see us shoeless and it's a direct threat on their own belief system and their own self-esteem, their own frame, like their life. They feel like they have some kind of rejection or feel like they may not be enough in some way or another. And especially in the fitness world, there's a lot of intensity with people getting aggravated at other people who are doing better than them in the sense of physique and with health. And it is something that they can use to draw this resentment. It's just like people on YouTube who are making comments about other people that they don't like, and people on Instagram making comments on people they don't like. It's very easy to just say something mean instead of saying, hey, I don't like this because it makes me feel less, or I don't like this because it makes me self-conscious. I don't like this because I feel like I'm not enough when I see this happening around me, which is ironically what Amanta talked about with her friends, which is like exactly what they say, which is so interesting that they're so straightforward about it. But with us and most places and most people, they don't say, hey, I don't like this because it makes me feel like I'm not doing enough, or it makes me feel like I'm not enough, or it makes me feel like I'm less than. It's something that they do that they have to drag the other person down to their level with. They're trying to drag this person down. Like, no, don't do that. Be like me. It's like it's like all the lobsters in the cage trying to escape, and one tries to escape, and then the others try and kill it because like, no. We're all here. You're staying with us, you son of a gun. That's what it felt like.
See, what I really think it is this Karen mentality, and a lot of people see it like it goes viral on the internet. But it truly is. It's people that are not able to do something for whatever reason in their own head, or they just hate it that someone else is doing something that they don't fully agree with, or something that maybe they even want to do. They just haven't come to terms with these things, but also could be just them wanting to control other people in the most minor, like control freak kind of way. And they'll blow up like if they get any pushback. Like that's why we see all these freak outs, people trying to control other people's lives or whatever they're doing. It's like, just don't care as much. Like, I don't know, I just don't get it.
Don't care, Karen.
So one I remember an interview that Jordan Peterson had with Piers Morgan, and Piers asked him, what is the most dangerous thing in society, right? Because Elon Musk would say it's AI, the dangers of AI, singularity and whatnot. And other people are also very scared of AI, right? So he asked Jordan Peterson, and Jordan Peterson's answer was narcissistic compassion. So when I thought of this event at the gym, I thought, well, if a person is very narcissistic, right, the ego-driven, that I am the shit, and they fake compassion towards health of the world to control someone else's free speech in this case. Because to me, if I'm not barefoot, I'm not fully expressing myself. Like this is just, I've always been barefoot. In Playa, we had a badass gym where they loved everyone barefoot. Like, it was just total grungy, nasty ass gym. And then in Tulum, it was jungle gym, which is obviously like it's a jungle gym, and barefoot, you should be barefoot. So it's almost like at those gyms, you would get called upon if you had shoes on. Like, what are you doing? Why do you have shoes on? Are you crazy? Whereas in this gym, it was more like, we don't want you to express yourself fully. And we're gonna bully you. It's bullying. To me, it's simple bullying, man. And well, I would love to get into some testosterone talk, because I know that when it comes to bullying, one of Sapolsky's talks I heard, he talked about how if you look at if you take a group of 5 primates, baboons, and because he studied baboons for like 30 years, so it's like you look at 5, and you increase testosterone in the 3rd ranked guy, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 3rd ranked guy. And the question was, is his increase in testosterone, does he start attacking the number 1 and number 2 in rank? Or does he start bullying number 4 and number 5? And what do you guys think the answer might be? Have you looked at this study yet? Or heard about it?
I have.
Yeah, I know you've highlighted it before, but I don't recall. I'd highly doubt that he would go after the 2 or the top 2. I think he would kind of still be kind of more of a protector as it is. And even though he may be the highest in testosterone, so to speak, I think the number 2 and number 1 may actually be lower than him. But I don't know. Just inference.
Yeah. Do you remember JMO?
Yeah. Yes.
Did I tell you? Is that why you remember?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
We talked about this.
Well, let's see if you remember. What do you remember?
I remember that the number 3 guy, when he gets more testosterone, is unfazed by the 1 and 2, but he bullies the 4 and 5 harder.
Yeah, that's it. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that I've learned about testosterone in the last probably 4 to 5 months, watching a bunch of Sapolsky, Huberman, a bunch of interviews, reading a bunch of books, is that testosterone just makes you more of what you are. You tend to think that, testosterone is going to make you more aggressive. Not true. It's going to make your sexual behavior higher. Not true. It just makes you more of what you already are. So if you're a bully, it'll make you more of a bully. If you're kind, it'll make you more kind. And the reasoning behind that is that testosterone allows you to keep your status. So when your status is challenged, and usually it's challenged by people below you, not by people above you. When your status is challenged, that's when you start defending your territory. And that's one of the main key findings from the last 50 years of testosterone literature, is that testosterone just makes you more of what you already are.
Well, that makes so much sense, considering just reflecting on my journey, like in a snapshot. I was like so withheld. Like, I mean, you guys know me, but early on, I just was so shy and so not kind of stable in my own view of myself and what I wanted to do. And of course, you can develop your purpose, but through my testosterone transformation, that's exactly what's happened. Like, I'm pretty much the exact same person, just more secure in who I am and more secure in being able to express myself. So that makes a lot of sense.
And that's the summation of all the research, really, is that's what it's saying through all the animal studies, is this commonality of, it's not about the hierarchy with testosterone, it's about the confidence in oneself and the ability to live oneself to the fullest and in one's own truth.
This is it. And this also ties to there was another study where they looked at marathon runners. And this wasn't one of those where, if you run long distances, your testosterone drops and, like soy boys are marathon runners. It wasn't something like that. It was more, you looked at where people finished the race, right? So the guy who got first, the guy who got 300th, and so on. And the key finding was very interesting. Have you guys looked at this study or heard about a study like that? Where they looked at winners and the rankings of the finishers and the before and after of their testosterone levels. You guys read this yet?
We've talked about this before.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm familiar with winner effect in other studies, but not this one specifically.
Yeah, this is great. I learned a lot about this from Sapolsky too. So basically what he said is the biggest spike in testosterone was not the guy who got first, not the guy who got second, not the guy who got third. It was like the guy who was like 217th or something crazy like that. And they were like, what happened? Why is that? And they found out that it's the link between boosting testosterone and what you expect success to be. So for that guy who had the craziest boost in testosterone, he was gonna die the week before that. He just missed death. Like he had some disease and he was gonna die soon. He was some kind of chronic illness. And something happened where he didn't die. And he basically escaped death. He fought death. And now he was able to participate in a marathon and place, whatever, 217th. But the expectation of success is what gave him that testosterone boost. So it's like the takeaway is, and I heard Chamath Palihapitiya, he's one of these billionaire Indian guys who used to own the Golden State Warriors. And he had a recent interview and he said, define success your own way. Don't define success on what the world says, but have your own definition of success. So if you eat a healthy meal, if you do a badass workout, which was difficult and you finished it, if you sleep and you wake up fully refreshed, that's success to me. So when I eat a badass meal, I say, wow, man, I got success in life. Even talking to you guys here in this podcast, to me, this is massive success that I can talk to two badass people and share this knowledge with the world for free and not be at Gulag getting questioned by an interrogator.
We've discussed the importance of the gratitude and the success in those daily wins and how much that affects us. Because it's not just about winning. I think winner's effect we do talk about with the studies with the sport that Andre and I have spoken of as well, and winning and people watching sports, and because they're not even involved, they still feel like they're winning. But I feel like, now this could just be extrapolating here, but when there's a win that is less expected, like a comeback, a huge win that you don't expect, whether it's your own life or you're watching it someone else, I feel like that just amplifies the effect even more. Like the guy who thought he was going to die and now he's running a marathon. His winner's effect is amplified because he was hoping that he'd be able to walk again, let alone run 26.2 miles.
Exactly. I think that's a very important and interesting point. And I think this brings in that dopamine correlation with everything here, because you get the highest dopamine spike from something that is like an unexpected, stimulation that's positive. So I think that's what weaves in all of this, the winner effect, the higher testosterone, the unexpected wins perhaps being higher than a normal expectation. Mindset too. I mean, all of this, it starts in the mind, and a lot of people don't grasp how much even mindset and outlook of your day will translate into the actions you take and how you treat yourself, and ultimately what your testosterone is, even in the short term. Because a lot of people will bring up, oh, well, that's just short-term testosterone gains. It's like, yeah, depending on how short your mindset will kind of constrict or allow you to proliferate. Like that's truly what it is. Like you're living your life based off your mindset, and you make those gains based on what you're doing with it in that time snapshot. So the future, yeah, sure. It may not be super affected, but if you continue this thought process and continue seeing things this way, then that's exactly what life is all about. And you'll make all of those gains, no doubt.
Bro.
The dopamine thing is very interesting. And I love, Andre, how you link different hormones together. And obviously, you're an androgen diet author, so you know all this. The dopamine unexpected reward. This is so huge. I don't know if you guys know this, but when I was recording from monkeys, one time my boss went to India. He went to India for like 3 weeks for a conference and some kind of symposium. And during that time, the monkey I was working on, Klaus, so my boss has worked with like 18 monkeys at Harvard before that, right? So this was like his 19th or 20th monkey at McGill. And he said that this guy, Klaus, is the hardest monkey I've ever worked with. The guy doesn't want to stay still. He's moving his head, like he's just jerking around, and we can't measure the spikes properly if the monkey's moving, right? Because he's head fixed and he needs to like do the task. So while Chris was gone, I put Klaus on a unexpected juice reward algorithm, right? So I looked at Bill Newsom, who is one of the fathers of this field of, he's like this, he's the guy who wrote the grant to put an electrode in his own brain so we can do basic science research on humans. He said he would be the first subject. Obviously NIH denied the grant, but Bill Newsom is awesome. So I read some of his work, and Michael Shadlin and these guys who were studying reward. And I found that if you just give the monkey the juice like every third or every fifth success or every seventh, but the monkey doesn't know. So I wrote this for loop in the code, and I was giving him like a random reward, anywhere from like 3 to 5 extra juices, anywhere from when he gets like 5 to 10 correct, right? And I kept changing these numbers so the monkey has no idea. So he has to like pattern recognize, and he's like, if I continue to do this, dopamine, right? Because he wants more and more and more, the molecule of more. And then Klaus, dude, he started performing. Like, because of the gambling and because he didn't know when the extra juices would come, he just was focused, man. And that's how I solved this trouble monkey problem. Like, just made him gamble.
So gambling fixes the drive, but also burns out the dopamine receptors at the same time.
It depends. And it's so interesting too how we get superstitious about different rewards because of the randomness. You've seen the mice studies where they'll have that specific dropper of like glucose, and it'll only come out at specific times or if he does specific actions, and then they'll run into like routines and start doing like the same movements, even whatever it took that they think their mind led them to get that reward. And we get superstitious like in our daily routines ourselves as humans, obviously with the different conditioning, and that's just how our brain does the math on its own. But that's super fascinating too.
Yeah, man. Yeah, the dopamine relationship, they're sort of like close cousins, testosterone and dopamine. And even, a lot of people don't know this, but if you want a real sign, if you have an issue, especially with free testosterone, look at your morning wood. However, guys with normal levels of testosterone sometimes can't get an erection during sex. And that because the sex erections are not necessarily testosterone dependent. They're dependent on dopamine, oxytocin, and a variety of other neurotransmitters and hormones. And so that is something that people don't think about, right? Like in the penile arterioles and sinusoids, you have the nitric oxide release, through the synthase and the whole cyclic GMP pathway. But testosterone triggers that release. But you're never gonna get there during sex if you don't have the oxytocin response, the dopamine response, and you have to have your receptors there, not depleted. Like, JMO brought up the concept of depleted receptors if you are addicted to something or if you have too much reward, especially when the reward comes from no work, like porn addiction and.
Oh, yes. Well, Huberman speaks of it now in the Huberman lab, but from my own N=1 experimentation of life, I found that whenever I was most deep in my dopamine fixes, especially pornography, my erection quality during physical intercourse was shit. It was terrible. And it's something that has been absolutely interesting to me in my whole life journey. And now that Huberman speaks about it, understanding these dopamine receptors. Now, is it exactly a process where the dopamine receptors become desensitized? Because there's these words people use. Is there a way for these to be desensitized? How does that even work?
Yeah. Andre, you want to take a crack at this or you want me to do it?
Yeah, I mean, just theoretically, I think it would be similar to how things fire and how there's that kind of rebalancing effect. And I'm forgetting the specific terminology, but you have that kind of pulsatile thing that sets off the reaction, and then it goes down lower than the baseline, and that refractory period takes time. So I would think it probably relates in that same fashion at the receptor level.
Great point about the refractory period. So JMO and Andre, a quick dive into neuroscience postsynaptic stuff. So imagine you have a neuron. It's called a postsynaptic. So you have a presynapse and a postsynapse, right? After synapse and before synapse. So imagine this neuron fires an action potential, which is this spike, right? It's like an activity. There will be a neurotransmitter released, which will bind to a receptor on this cell, right? Now you can imagine that this cell has thousands of receptors. And then this neurotransmitter is not just going to this cell, but it's going to thousands of cells, right? Think of it like a 3D structure. Now, if you bind to a receptor, now this cell has to do its work, right? And it depends on if it's a ligand-gated receptor where you have a fast action potential, or it's slow activation, and that's called cyclic AMP dependent, a second messenger pathway, which is much slower. But if you get all the receptors to get the neurotransmitter, you will literally run out of receptors, right? And this happens a lot with a lot of drug addictions, because a lot of drug addictions, including even some of the psychedelics, which depend on serotonin, the way they work, and even SSRIs work like this. So you get neurotransmitter release. Let's say serotonin, for example, with SSRIs. You get a bunch of neurotransmitter release from a synapse, right, in a postsynaptic cell, right? This serotonin floating around in the synaptic cleft, which is this gap between the postsynapse and the presynapse, this serotonin usually gets reuptaken by this like recycling mechanism, right? So this cell needs to recycle the serotonin, so it's reuptaking the serotonin. But what SSRIs do is selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, right? So what it's doing is it is inhibiting the reuptake, the recycling of serotonin. So there's a bunch of serotonins floating around, and there's more serotonin floating around. So what happens? Now there's all these receptors that are being recruited, and now there's so much serotonin to bind to these receptors. And that's how serotonin gets increased in the body. And obviously the SSRI literature goes all the way back to 1970, and I don't even think there's been a single study actually proving the effect of SSRIs, which is an insane thing, right? We've been using SSRIs, like the world has been using them for 50 years, especially in the US, for depression and anxiety. But we don't actually know if it works. This is like something insane. But supposedly the way it's supposed to work is by inhibiting these reuptake receptors. So so if you inhibit that reuptake, more serotonin stays in the synapse, in the cleft, in the gap, and then that's how these receptors get depleted, because now there's more dopamine to get into those receptors and cause a presynaptic chain of events to happen. And then to point out the refractory period that Andre brought up, this is also really interesting. When you look at a spike, right? A spike happens, and then there's this there's this hyperpolarization. It's called an after hyperpolarization, right? So there's this, you get synapses, right? You get neurotransmitter, and then there's going to be a little bit at a time of your activity, and then it's going to reach a threshold, and it's going to spike. But after the spike, there's this after hyperpolarization where it can't spike anymore. So there are drugs that you can use to minimize this refractory period. And one of Sapolsky's lectures, he talks about how you can the amygdala, which has a shit ton of androgen receptors, which testosterone acts on. The amygdala's ability to fire, the threshold that it needs to reach to fire, that threshold decreases because of the sheer number of androgen receptors in the amygdala, and because of if you get a boost in testosterone. So amygdala is a really, really good area to look at when you think of fear responses, aggression responses, because you can imagine someone who's a bully, like that guy at the gym that we talked about earlier, or the two guys that complained. If he was to get more testosterone, right, boost in testosterone, he took aphro-d, or he did something, he would become more of a bully. And the way it would happen is the threshold needed to trigger him would decrease. And that's how testosterone is acting on the amygdala, because amygdala is the area which is responsible for your fear response, for your anxiety response, and how aggressive you are, right? So it's not like, oh, testosterone makes you more aggressive. No, it is testosterone. Testosterone is decreasing the threshold in the amygdala that you need to actually become aggressive. So that refractory period can decrease in the amygdala. So you get more fire, you get more spikes. It's not like there were no spikes there and now there's spikes. No. Spikes were there, but now there are more spikes. Why? Is what Andre said. That after hyperpolarization period, that refractory period decreases. So you get a burst of spikes. And
wow.
Yeah, man.
That amygdala correlation is insane. I've not even heard that before, but that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, it shows why perhaps, this isn't even, I don't believe this is offensive to say, but women are sensitive to things, especially if it's going to elicit a fear response. And, this could be a reason for men to biologically understand, hey, this girl that's next to you, she's freaked out, like your woman. You need to comfort her. Just because your fear response didn't get set off because you have higher androgens than her doesn't mean that it's not real to her. So I think the understanding of these things on a biological level can also help us understand and help people better. And that makes a lot of sense why JMO goes through the gym and is assessing the potential threats in some fashion, because dude has freaking off the charts T levels as well. Wow.
It definitely helps. But to summarize too, with the dopamine and the serotonin, it's a relationship between the receptors and the actual dopamine and serotonin itself that have that ability to create those lasting effects. And when you have too much of one or the other, or you inhibit one, specifically the receptor, there is that shift and that change. But it seems like a lot of the receptor inhibition comes from wear and tear, and a lot of the dopamine and serotonin just being decreased comes from a lifestyle, comes from what you're doing in your life and how you're living your life. And certain lifestyles aren't able to produce as much dopamine and serotonin, and then certain lifestyles start to abuse those receptors because you get such a high of this dopamine and serotonin that comes from certain activities, perhaps taking drugs, drug use, perhaps doing things that like gambling, things that are going to start to cause you to need more and more dopamine, to need more receptors to get that same buzz that you were expecting. So you need more and more dopamine to fit all those receptors, and it's just going to constantly grow, and you're going to need more. Versus someone who doesn't watch porn, for example, coming from my own experience, who's never watched porn, who hasn't even masturbated. Like think of like Amish people who, they see like a woman lifts her ankle from her blouse, and you're like, holy smokes, this is great. Your dopamine just fires off, and you're just like, this is amazing. So whenever you're in that scenario with a woman, that's why they are so good at having so many children, because they're able to be like, whoa, that was an ankle, let's get it going. Like, I'm excited, I'm ready to go. Versus a lot of guys, and especially myself, I noticed that if I had a beautiful woman in front of me, I was just looking at her like, this is amazing, I want to do these things with this girl, but I'm at like 3/4 chub right now. Like what's the deal? Like, why am I like this? Why are my dopamine sensors disfigured in this way? And why do I need more? And I think a lot of it too regards to not just using porn, but also social media and other dopamine effective tools that we have in everyday life, where Farhan luckily has trained me in the gym specifically, which I never really done before, because a lot of my gym, of course, back in the OG days was Andre's favorite gym classes. And then now is, working out, following the androgen diet protocol in the gym, and just using my phone to follow that, be on airplane mode, but no phone in the gym. And that's the time of the day. That's, an hour to 2 hours, zero phone usage. And I think that that's something that can also help to start with that process with those dopamine receptors, and being able to not only increase your other hormones and your testosterone, but also to be able to have a healthier relationship with yourself and with your own relationship romantically with others in your life. So that's where I'm going to start trying my plans here for this. But I think that summarizes it decently, Farhan. I just want to make sure we're on the same page here.
Yeah. One thing you mentioned, if I can, that I think integrates really well, especially on all topics we've discussed thus far, is, as you said, Jameson, like, we kind of are what we do. Like, we live our lifestyle a specific way. It's kind of our routine. And for a lot of people, they don't take into account the effect that it has on our hormones. They don't believe that the things we do every day somehow has an effect on our hormones. And that's crazy. But also on a whole other level, even besides kind of the receptor levels and having excess serotonin or whatever neurotransmitter in the interstitial, this whole pattern of doing things is hugely important. And when you break down the topic of erectile dysfunction, like not being able to be fully there, in terms of masculine blood flow with a real woman, well, it's potentially because this pattern of behavior that you do over and over to get that dopamine spike watching porn, you're not even getting the oxytocin and all of these other natural hormones that should be in sequence. So when you're met with that, your brain doesn't recognize that pattern because you've ingrained it in this specific way. And I think this is what makes sense for a lot of people when they try and understand the effect that porn has on everyone. Ultimately, I think you have to look at it in this way, but a lot of people don't break it down as simple as that, or they don't grasp these concepts. But this pattern of doing things and how often we do it, this has to be in the discussion at some point, because this is huge.
Absolutely. I agree completely.
Another thing that I realized probably in the last 4 to 5 months that I didn't know in the last 10 years about testosterone is it's the concept of behavior influencing the T levels, not the other way around. So yes, you can boost testosterone with powerful herbs. Like we know from aphro-d, we know this. But the boost in testosterone that you get, the link between that causing something else is not as strong as the link between a behavior leading to an increasing testosterone. So you can imagine someone who takes aphro-d, but he doesn't have any behavior change. it's not going to get that big of a boost in T levels. He might get 200 nanograms per deciliter. You know, we know from the Tongkat at least studies, you know, the 200 nanograms per deciliter, the 40+% increase in 2 to 4 weeks. Very, very fast. We know this. But if you want to get a double in testosterone, you want to even go 250% more or a triple, then the behavior is what's going to really make it happen. So you can use herbs, you can use aphro-d, you can use the androgen diet to get that initial boost to not be low anymore, right? Because if you're low T, forget about it. Like, you're done. You get to that average level, that normal level, above average even, but then you want to get to the elite. That's where the behavior comes in, right? That's where, getting sunlight in the morning, sleeping well, sleeping your 8.5 hours every day, relaxing at night so you can actually go to sleep, waking up according to your circadian rhythm, doing the proper intermittent fasting if that helps you lose your body fat and get your body composition in order, right? All of these things, the winning, not feeling like a loser, defining success your own way, all of this mindset stuff, this behavior stuff. Like, simple example, we were talking about sex here, right? It's not that boosting testosterone will make you sexually more active or make your sexual behavior higher. No, it's the other way around. Being more sexually active and having an increased sexual behavior will increase your testosterone. That is the causal link, not the testosterone way. So I believe that the best thing someone could do is get that initial boost, get that motivation, even especially the dopamine hit, without making it easy for yourself, right? Actually do the work, do the self-analysis, the self-auditing, and the mindset change, write down in your journal, do gratitude. All this is proven scientifically. And then with that initial boost, you start changing your behaviors. You actually start going to the gym. You start following Andre's protocols to work out, following the androgen diet. You follow the proper nutrition, and then you get the double of testosterone and triple, and then there's no limit. I mean, we can reach to 1,500 nanograms per deciliter. I have no doubt about this. It's just a matter of time and a matter of focus. So,
time and focus.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you mentioned, Farhan. I think for a lot of people, though, having supplements and, aphro-d, things that do spike these things, even caffeine, we know spikes dopamine, I think they can be utilized because I'm looking back on myself right now, and I was at such a low that I just needed to get the wheels turning in some fashion. And I think that's absolutely where these kind of sparks to ignite the flame can happen, and starting to take good supplements. Of course, good food, you want good gut health so you can absorb these supplements, but just getting the wheels grinding in some fashion is the first step. And I tell this to all the people. I'm like, first thing you should probably do is take aphro-d, get your sleep right, and clean up your diet. And with that, they will all work together to get the wheels churning. And as long as you continue to dream more, continue to know that you can do more and be more, then there's no limit for sure.
Absolutely. I want to talk about that with you guys. I want to get into not only the supplements that are used, but also the efficacy of the supplements, the quality, efficacy, the ability, the content, the ability of absorption that happens within the body, and also the potency, the necessary steps, what it takes in order to have an effective change from these supplements. Because I agree totally with Andre too, with being able to absorb in your gut and looking at what is being absorbed and what you need to find and what compounds are working and what compounds are working in your favor, and some compounds may not be working in your favor, and how to view this and be aware of this, and being able to dive into that, especially with things like Tonkat, and also looking at our conversation about dopamine. being someone that has spoken with Andre before about mucuna pruriens, being able to take that L-DOPA and how that could have some kind of effect. I know that's something I've experimented with myself personally, was taking the L-DOPA from mucuna pruriens and then making sure that I work when I take the L-DOPA, because it's dangerous, right? If you take this dopamine and then you do things that are already stimulating your dopamine, like social media, pornography, gambling. For me personally, it's just going on walks and doing errands is something that gets me really excited. And I find that if I take something like mucuna, I'm more motivated to go do those things. But I know that because I took this, I need to focus on work, and I need to make sure that work becomes more and more pleasurable, not in a way of it has to be something that you are feeling good about all the time. And you know that if you delay the gratification, it feels better, and the dopamine release is much more deserving and much more amplified. But also being able to understand that these supplements do have an impact on your lifestyle, and being able to follow that lifestyle goes hand in hand with taking those supplements. And then on top of that, there's a whole different facet of what the supplements are, how much of a supplement you should be taking, why the supplements work, the quality of the supplements, why are supplements not created equally, and making sure to balance the right supplements with the lifestyle that goes hand in hand with those supplements.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question, JMO, because I know that Tonkat Ali has been a huge subject in a lot of discussions, and it's really finally starting to catch on with a lot of people. It's being put in just about everything I've seen. It's being talked about, Joe Rogan, whatnot. But what do the people not actually understand when it comes to sourcing, or what kind of place has the best Tonkat Ali? Because we know we can grow anything anywhere, but truly I think it comes down to things like the soil. But what are other things that we need to look out for when it comes to Tonkat Ali?
Right. Because not all Tonkat Ali is created equal. Think about a farm. There's a lot of people that are going to farms right now and getting really consistent, regular old farm grown food with the same nutrients: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. You're not going to get anything else because that's what they use, NPK fertilizer. And then you go and grow your own food, or you get it from a farmer, you get it from a farmer's market who puts in manure, who puts in all these different nutrients in the soil that allow the soil to rotate. You're getting a whole different plant. So think about that in the wild world. Some places are going to be more of a benefit for you when you're getting your herbs. Some herbs are going to be grown in ways that are the herbs, but you're not going to get the constitutes of the herbs as potently as you would be getting them in a circumstance where it was done not only traditionally, but it was done in a way where it's actually able to be used over years and years and years. Because think of these medicines, they've been around for hundreds and thousands of years. If you think about a lot of the Chinese medicine, a lot of the Ayurvedic medicines, the principles have been practiced for so long, but there's a reason why people get them from those areas. There's a reason why you aren't getting those from places around you. You're not seeing these things. You're not hearing about these things before, because there's systems in place to not only extract and to produce this product, but to actually grow the initial product. So with Tonkat Ali, there's a system in place that has been done, has been practiced, that has been used. And now we've actually proven that in the literature and the scientific studies, that the Tonkat Ali from these places and with this system has an everlasting effect versus the Tonkat Ali from other places and within other systems that are going to be able to label themselves as Tonkat Ali because that's what they are grown as, but they are not going to be able to be constituted as something that is as effective as what has been shown in the research. Now, I know Farhan too goes into literature with that and understands how that all makes sense, but the first and foremost thing I think we all should speak about and talk about is the actual quality of the nature and the process and the way this herb and these herbs and these adaptogens have come to be, specifically with Tonkat Ali.
JMO, one thing I want to highlight to everyone is that out of everyone I've ever met in my entire life, you are the most anal when it comes to nutrition, lifestyle, toxicity. Like you are, Andre, I don't know, you hung out with Jameson before, so maybe you know, but dude, this guy looks at everything. He literally brought this electrical outlet thing to put into the different rooms to make sure that the solar panel energy, EMF, whatever emission doesn't affect our body's energy. Like he brought that for me as well. And I'm very thankful for that. And even when we go to the co-working space, he keeps all the lights off because the LED vibration affects the body somehow, right? And it's phenomenal because and Martha and I talk about this all the time. We really appreciate JMO because he's opening our eyes. So when we go to the farmer's market, he will ask very pointed questions like this the NKV, right? No, the NKP, right? NPK, yeah, the nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus. K being potassium, right? So the NPK is something that he asked the girl. I remember one of the farmer girls or the supplier, and she was like, "What the hell does this mean? What are you talking about?" So the people who don't know what this means are probably not the ones you want to buy from. And the reason I'm highlighting this is because I'm honored that Jameson was one of the first customers of aphro-d, and even through his analities, he was able to understand how high quality these herbs are. And we'll get into the Tonkat Ali nitty gritty very soon, especially like peptides and all that cool stuff. But JMO, I want to ask you, initially, when you found aphro-d and you saw my ad or whatever, however you found it, what was your initial impression? And what research did you do to make sure it was legit, just like you do all the crazy research on everything?
Right. Well, with aphro-d, when I first heard of aphro-d, a lot of it was built from my relationship from the group coaching that I've been able to meet you and be able to meet Andre and understand the validity of that. And on top of that relationship, I was able to figure out what these ingredients exactly were and where they were sourcing from. And at the time, I was able to find the initial supplier of these products. Now, not the initial farmers, but the company that helped initially start aphro-d, and look into each nitty gritty of that company. And I found out one thing: they were a bunch of hippies. And that is something that can work absolutely in your favor and can go absolutely against your favor. Because as Andre knows and hold me very accountable with, there is a fine balance between legitimate, scientific, research-backed validity and woo-woo. And there is a good chance that a lot of things that are woo-woo could have potential, but they're being totally plastered in a woo-woo sense, that they're just being totally pushed and drawn way further than they should be, and they are not getting any validity. And there are also things in the woo-woo sector that are completely disregarded and don't make any sense, but have had such a following for so many years and have developed this sense of community around them that people have to do this because they feel a righteousness behind it. So I definitely make sure to balance. So that's the first thing I looked to with aphro-d, was when I heard about these hippies and understood, okay, where are these hippies coming from and why are they so excited about these products? Because with Chinese medicine, I've never really experienced the power of it knowingly. I've taken some things before in the past. I've heard about things like maca root and ginseng, and I've been able to add those and incorporate those. And in my young and naive mind, I didn't think about the quality. I didn't think about where it came from. I just heard good for sex, good for libido, good for strength training. And that was all I needed to hear. My first testosterone supplement, this just goes to show how I didn't care for such a long time. When I was in high school and college, I would take a testosterone supplement from GNC. And basically what this was, it actually had LJ100 in it, which is a interesting situation. But I took this supplement in high school and college out of curiosity. I took it. I had one bottle of it. I took it once because it was about $180 for a bottle. So in my mind, I was like, oh, this is like legit stuff. And I didn't get any blood tests done. I didn't take it to try and get anything um, too noticeable. I just knew that it would be good for me. I had no idea what testosterone was. By the time I heard about aphro-d, I was able to actually research testosterone. I learned about a little bit more about hormones, and I learned about quality sourcing. And when I found out what these hippies were doing, I was astonished with the scientific nature that they've approached these things with. None of these stories that they shared, other than the origin story, of course, which is a very interesting way to describe why something works, but then the studies back up why those things work. And with aphro-d, of course, you know the story of the Hishuwu, Mr. He and his long dark hair. You know, these like almost like kid stories you would tell your child before bed. But in China, they talk about this man with dark hair. And being able to hear those stories that were, consoling, because I'm like, oh, okay, there's an origin here. It makes sense. But also being able to look at literature and see, okay, there's research done that actually shows that this has a positive impact. And it's not just a scenario where people are like, hey, I feel good taking this. I'm going to keep taking it. You should take it too. Because not only is that going to be something that you can apply to everybody else, but also that's not going to be something that is sustainable for everyone, because different people have different bodies with different actions. So you're going to need multiple people. You're going to need to take out the placebo effect, which, as we spoke of yesterday, Farhan, is such a huge, huge addition to one's belief and what they do and what they take, that it could have a totally unwavering effect compared to what's actually working in their body and the mechanisms of their brain. So first time I heard of aphro-d, saw the origin story, I was like, this is awesome, but I need more, because I was more skeptical, because I remember taking testosterone boosters and I was like, this stuff is cool. It smells funky. It's fun to take. It comes in cool colors. But at the time, I didn't really care about the other ingredients. I didn't care it had red 40 in it. Like, I didn't know that those things were harming me. With aphro-d, it was just the 4 herbs. And I was like, holy smokes, this is just the actual ingredients. It's not all these fillers. It's not all of these weird dyes, all these weird things to add taste, flow agents. And I noticed that right away. That was the first thing that struck me, because of my background in supplements, and noticing, okay, my protein has all this crap in it. My weird little testosterone booster from GNC has all this crap in it. Like, what am I actually getting benefit from here? So I was able to go to each of the 4 ingredients, get a backstory on where they come from, which helps, satisfy my woo-woo side. Maybe Andre would read those and roll his eyes a little bit and go right to literature. But at the time, I was like, this is exciting. And it motivated me to look at the literature to see what was actually happening behind the scenes, the mechanisms, if this worked for real human beings. And that was the first reaction when I came to aphro-d.
Yeah. So first thing when I saw aphro-d, of course, I had got it because it was like an add-on offer with the group coaching, and I'm like, well, see, I actually approached the group coaching. I'm like, I don't have low testosterone, I don't have erectile issues, all these things. Lo and behold, get the blood test done, and then I'm like, oh shit, you got to dial some shit in because this is bad. So I'd came from the camp of thinking, oh, I'm good, I just need to optimize a little bit, and then finding out. So once aphro-d was in the situation, then I was, of course, taking it. It tasted horrible, and a lot of people agreed with me. I did taste tests around the house with it, super bitter. But from that point on, I was researching every little thing, especially as I finally started realizing that herbs freaking matter. Because like Jameson said, I don't go into this woo-woo stuff too openly. I have to know something works, and herbs did not earn my trust at that point. I still took it consistently, but I was like, I don't know, man, it's just a freaking plant. And from then on, I certainly saw my blood work change, and I just lit up. I was like, holy crap, this actually has an effect. And from that point on, of course, you go through, you do your research on the different things as you're taking them. And I think the reason why aphro-d works specifically better than just maybe taking Tonkat Ali on its own is because it's formulated in a holistic way. And when you look at each individual ingredient, each of the 4, you're able to see, okay, this is not just a tea booster. This is like a tea saver. This is like a tea production sleep enhancer. And it's also like an blood flow optimizer all the way to liver detoxifier. And when you break it down on all these levels, you increase 1, absorption, you increase 2, blood flow, so the hormone signaling can be optimized as well and the signal can get sent and received. 3, sleep enhancer. Of course, that's your rest and recovery and producing testosterone at its core. You need good sleep. So it covers so many different bases, and you can tell that when you look in each individual herb. Like, this is the perfect combination. And I think anyone that knows these ingredients, if they knew them to their core and saw that they all combined in this way, they would just be over the moon. They're like, this is perfect. Like, it's super balanced. I know I heard our good friend Chris talk about, because he's had good Tonkat Ali, which I think probably was sourced from you, Farhan, but he took just Tonkat Ali starting off, and he's like, I get really aggressive. And you took that to heart when it was some feedback that he was giving you, and you're like, okay, we need to balance this formula. And that goes back to what JMO said. It goes down to balance on all levels to optimize everything up. Foundations need to be set, but you can't have one pillar that's too high or too low. Everything has to be balanced.
Yeah, as you guys were speaking, I was reminiscing and like the nostalgia of the past and how we formulated and spent so many years doing R&D and all the testing, and man, it's a great story. And what's cool is, like, JMO and I visited our manufacturer a couple of months ago, and Andre, you've also visited a manufacturer even before we did, like a year ago or whenever, and it was such a blessing to see, okay, this is why this stuff is so high quality. Not only do we know the farmers who we get aphro-d from, the actual, the people who are supplying it without any middleman, but we even see how high quality the manufacturing practices are, all the certifications these manufacturing centers have, and the care and how clean the facility is, and we even hired a third-party auditor to come with us as our consultant, and he was like impressed, man. The guy's like very, very anal about this stuff, and he was just like, man, I don't know, these guys are amazing. Like, I've never seen anything this great, and we're lucky to be able to not just get the best quality herbs, but produce them in the best way, which is, it's that every check mark is checked in the entire journey. And so, yeah, man, we've come a long way, and we are still just getting started, because there's a lot more to do, millions of men to get aphro-d too. And I also want to discuss, like, if we get into, because we're discussing quality right now, and I love the fact that you brought up, the sort of the supporting cast of Tonkat Ali, the other 3 herbs, Shizandra, Hushuwu, and pearl powder. And we'll get into what each of these, how they are the supporting cast and how they support Tonkat Ali to be the most effective possible. Let's get into the sourcing a little bit, right? For Tonkat Ali, I know you guys have done, all the literature, and we'll get into some of the specific tests that we've done in the Tonkat we have in aphro-d. So what do you guys think about when you go deeper, right? So you have this thing, Tonkat Ali, right? You have to ask yourself, well, what type of tree is it? What part of the tree do we get this from? Where is the tree located? How much rain is in this area? How is it extracted? How is it pulverized? How is it washed? Right? So what types of questions are important or were important for you guys when you first started? Like, what sorts of questions would you ask to verify, confirm the effectiveness, safety, quality of something like Tonkat Ali.
Well,
Yeah, Andre asked me about that earlier too. So
yeah, I mean, JMO, you know a lot more than me, so I'll just start from a like slightly lower viewpoint. One of the things that I had learned early on, when of course I had higher SHBG, is the part of the herb matters, like the root versus the leaf versus the stem. These all matter a lot for the specific compound you're trying to get and get that benefit from. I found this out from nettle, for example. All of the supplement shops near me only had nettle leaf. So I was going up to the counter and saying, "Do you guys have nettle root?" And they walk over, they show me the nettle leaf, and I'm like, that's not going to cut it, because for the specific compounds that I need the root. So this is a problem. So knowing these types of things is huge. And I know that also goes down to Tonkat Ali, having the root versus anything else. And I think a lot of things that I've noticed in the research, a lot of formulators will not even specify, or sources. They're just like, oh, this is the whole plant. Maybe there's some root in there. Don't know. I mean, the root is the most crucial part of the plant for it to kind of be harvested, because otherwise, if you still have the root, it can continue to grow. But if it's not the root, you're not getting the compounds, even with Tonkat Ali. So knowing the part of the plant is huge for me, and I learned that very early on. But what have you seen? Like, what questions do you ask when it comes to down to these things as well, JMO?
yeah, exactly. The root's huge. That's cool that you were in GNC like that, and they kept on bringing you back to the other stuff. That's a great metaphor for what's happening today in the supplement industry for sure. My big five, what I look for is different factors. So I look for, first, the environmental factors. Where is it being grown, right? Second, the harvesting factors. How is it harvested? Who is doing all these different processes? How is it done? What do they look for? And then I look for things in regards of, how is it actually prepared? How is it actually processed? What are they doing once they bring it all in and have this final product that they're sharing? What's the actual process going on with that? But I also look at the people behind it. What's happening with the people who are in that environment, in that harvest? Is it local people? Is it manufactured heavily? Is it monoculture, just the same crop being grown over and over again? Is it wild crafted? Is it from nature? Is it made in a lab? Like, what is actually going on with the people there, and where is the focus? And then the fifth thing, the final thing I look at, is, when all is said and done, when everything is spoken for, what is the actual behind the scenes accreditation for what's happening here? Is there anything to confirm that these things are the truth? Is there anything that actually shows that this is actually what's happening versus what's just being splurged and spoken about? So those are my big five. And with Tonkat Ali, and specifically with Tonkat Ali in aphro-d, the environmental factor, there's a specific forest in Malaysia that they go to. And this specific forest gets a certain amount of annual rainfall. It's a very wet. There's a lot of rainfall in this forest. But not only that, it has certain minerals in the soil. So then I, cross-checked with number 5, and I was like, okay, what's the validity of this? And they've done the research between multiple forests, including forests in Malaysia. And they found that these forests have a different breakdown in their mineral structure. And they see this when they're testing the actual Tonkat Ali root itself. They're able to see this mineral structure. And this mineral structure has way more Tonkat Ali minerals in one and versus another. And specifically these two rainforests, which are the major rainforests in Malaysia, that show this. And then the second thing I look for is the harvest. Who are the people doing the harvest? Now, in Malaysia, they have the people who are locals, who are legally allowed to go into these forests and harvest and know what they're looking for, right? So they have this nature, which I could say, gets into the woo-woo side, brought down through generations of being able to look at the mature trees, being able to look at these trees and these roots and see the aging, see the quality of life of these trees, right? a lot of the roots, and not just the roots, but also the leaves and the stems, as you've spoken about, Andre, with different places getting it from all parts of the tree, have different ages. And a lot of the benefits come from a certain age, specifically 25 years old. Now, if I were you, I'd go into a forest and I'd be like, okay, how old is this tree? I have no idea. Like, I would have no idea to look at the age of the tree. I've heard things in high school, like in like nature's classroom, where you would count the lines on the tree trunks and then that could tell you how old the tree is. I don't know what the heck that means, but that's what I've heard. But they have these native people from Malaysia who go into the forests and harvest the root from the trees. And now they have videos of this, and they've had news reporters go with them who've been able to get the blessing from the community to go with them and record this beautiful process. And they've gone into the forest and they've seen that they're like, oh, we found one. And they find that some of these aren't up to their standards, and they go to the next one. And the guys are just like, what do you mean? Like, it's right here. Like, the reporters are like baffled because they're like, what do you mean you don't get this one? It's all here. Like, this is what you're looking for, isn't it? And the locals are like, no. Follow me. And then they find the root, and then they start extracting the root, which takes about anywhere from like 5 to 10 hours of just deep digging, multiple people. They don't bring in big backhoes. They aren't able to get all this equipment out there. They actually have to do it in a way where they can go in by hand. So that just itself brings in a lot of the human nature aspect, which I like because it has a connection to the earth. There's a ceremony behind it, right? Being able to be in a situation where you have that respect with nature has a benefit, because you can, and not only is it a woo-woo benefit, but also you can create an ecosystem where this lasts. You're able to get consistent quality over time, and you're able to get that supply over time. You're not going to just take advantage of something and just extinguish all the options. And then the third thing, the processing, being able to look at what's actually happening behind the scenes. And when they get the roots, what do they do with the roots? So first off, you have to make sure, like Andre said, get the roots, don't get the leaves, don't get the stems. There's other herbs and plant medicines that have all the benefits in the berries, benefits in the leaves, but this specific Tonkat Ali is the roots. Now, when you have these roots, you need to focus on what's happening to the roots. Are they going to high heat it? Are they going to pasteurize it? Are they going to put chemicals in it? Are they going to douse it in alcohol? What are they doing with this actual Tonkat Ali root once they get it? Because a lot of the locals, what they would do is they just take hot water, not boiling water, but hot water. They make a tea with the roots. And that's what they've been doing for thousands of years, right? So that's great for them because they have access to these roots. But what about everybody else in the world who isn't able to just go to their local store, get Tonkat Ali roots that were just picked from the last day or the last week, and then chop that up, make it into a tea, and be able to sip it with their family? That is something that the next step comes into. And not only is it important to keep the quality of it, but also to keep the lifetime of it. If you want something that lasts and has that effective long-term quality, you're going to need to do something to preserve that. And what a lot of companies do is spray dry. When they take maltodextrin, high heat over 200 degrees Fahrenheit, and just spray the heck out of this stuff. And it's quick, it's cheap, it works. And then you're the end user getting this product that has been spray dried, but it retains more moisture, so it has a slower shelf life, and it also has this maltodextrin in it, and it has this high heat, which could possibly change the quality of the compound that you get. And that's where my analness comes in, right? I think that the analness of being able to look at, well, I want to get the full benefits. I want to get like what the locals are getting. I want to get the tea quality benefits, but on a level where I can take this, have it shipped to my country, and be able to take it and enjoy it and respect the ways that it's been done traditionally, and appreciate and support the local people. So that's where freeze drying comes in. It takes a few more days, but it has a way better process, and it doesn't have the maltodextrin, and you have less water retained in it, so you can actually have a longer shelf life. So that's huge for me as well. And then, of course, being able to go from that product to the whole story behind the people and how that all works, I think is super interesting, of where it comes from in the forest, starting out in these little trees, and then it grows over 25 years. And then you get these huge trees that tower over the forest. And you can see photos of these huge Tonkat Ali trees that are just super high up in this misty forest. It's very captivating. and it just looks powerful when you look at it. And I'm sure if you're there in person, you can feel that if you're woo-woo. But if you're not woo-woo, you're probably going to be confused because you're going to look around and be like, oh, yeah, this is all the same stuff. Just go pick it and figure it out. So that's what a lot of farms in China does, and a lot of other countries that tries to recreate this magic of Malaysia that is Tongkat Ali root.
That's super interesting that you mentioned trees, JMO, because I know that if you even Google Eurycoma longifolia or Tongkat Ali, it's referred to as a shrub, which like now in my mind, it makes sense because people are harvesting wrong because they don't know. They're just not in tune with what is around them and what has been done for years. But that goes to show that a lot of people are probably sourcing and harvesting Tongkat Ali prematurely, which if they're harvesting shrubs, dude, like you're missing out on the potential, which you see, like, as you mentioned, like 25-year-old trees, like trees versus a shrub. That's a matter of, freaking decades. So
yeah,
that I just wanted to mention that because that was a big mental shift. And like shrubs versus trees, I didn't even know they could grow to be trees.
Maturation, it makes a huge difference. You put it in the oven a little bit longer and you get a totally different thing.
So JMO, let's go deeper into this concept of the Tongkat Ali quality, right?
Yeah, I didn't even get into that part of where's the actual research and the actual differentiation from everything else.
Exactly, because if you look at the high level research, and both of you are very aware of this, there's studies with young people where they find that they get a 40-something% increase in testosterone in 2 to 4 weeks. Then there's a study with older men who get an increase in 4 weeks, 200 nanograms per deciliter increase. It's like a 48% increase if you also work out with taking Tongkat Ali. And so we have this. We have the decrease in cortisol levels, a 16%, I believe, decrease in cortisol. So we have all of these studies that sort of prove the effect of Tongkat Ali. But then you look at, well, these studies that have used our Tongkat Ali to get these numbers, what are they using, right? And we're all using roots, not using the stem or the leaf or any other part of the tree. And I remember one of the papers showed that if you look at the peptides that are inside the Tongkat Ali, right? So you look at the root, you look at the leaves, you look at the stem, there are certain strong peptides which are actually doing the work of boosting testosterone and libido and muscle mass and so on. Those are sometimes threefold higher in the root than they are in the stem, and they are non-existent in the leaves. I remember one of the papers showed this. They literally just looked at different peptides and they said, okay, what is happening in terms of how much of this peptide is showing up in the root versus the stems and the leaf and so on. And so it's just a no-brainer that you got to use the root because that is the main thing. And one important thing you mentioned, JMO, about the differences, and if we look at something that identifies Tongkat Ali, right? It's a peptide known as eurycomanone. Now, there's different names, right? There's quasinoid is a name that they use sometimes. Uripeptide, because it's, Eurycoma longifolia is the name of Tongkat Ali. But to simplify the nomenclature, let's just use the word peptide, because that's what these are. These are, a chain of amino acids, which is what a peptide is. And I know there's a massive demand and interest and curiosity, especially in the bodybuilding field, about peptides. So let's get into this now, because I really want to get it deep into this. If you look at the peptide that identifies Tonkat Ali. It is known as eurycomanone. But JMO, from your research, you found that eurycomanone may not be what we should use to identify the quality of Tonkat Ali, right? Because I know there's companies out there that'll say, oh, 2% eurycomanone or 10% eurycomanone. And you'd be like, oh, eurycomanone, Eurycoma longifolia. That sounds like Tonkat Ali. And maybe if there's a lot of eurycomanone in this, maybe I'm going to get better effect of Tonkat Ali. That's the naive, idiotic way of looking at science, sort of like a dumb way. So what do you guys suggest, and what have you guys learned about eurycomanone from talking to the farmers, from the research that has been done, especially about certain effects of how is eurycomanone the key to how effective Tonkat Ali is, or are there other peptides that are more important or way more important that we should look at, and how do we identify what these peptides are? Let's talk about this a little bit.
Yeah. I want to start from a standpoint of a overall viewpoint and then go to Andre for a more specific evaluation. But the importance of eurycomanone starts from its identity. It's used to identify the quality tonkat, and it's something that they need and that has an identifying process.
So it's everywhere, right? Eurycomanone is everywhere. It's in the leaves, it's everywhere. It's not just in the root.
No. It's only in Tonkat Ali roots and very, very little in stems. So when they do the testing on this, this is what needs to be done for these Tonkat Ali roots. And we can get into how the testing works and the HPTLC chromatograms and how this actually makes sense, because I want to learn about that as well. But the big picture here is there's a sweet spot for this eurycomanone because it does have a benefit, and it needs to be there because it is the identity factor for what Tonkat Ali is. So it's very important. But yes, I want to figure out more about the peptides and then maybe even look at some of these different studies versus what's being spoken about with Tonkat Ali and how these peptides work and what's the most valuable in the peptides and how this relates to the bodybuilder industry and all these people talking about longevity and being able to feel younger again from all of these peptides that they're intravenously injecting into themselves.
Yeah, that's, I mean, what you mentioned, JMO, about having kind of balance and not kind of hyper valuing one thing over another, that's kind of the bro science way of thinking. And I hate that that's the fact. Like everyone's like, oh, this is the main thing. And it's just not the case. Like if there's anything I learned over the past 10 years of fitness is holistic, like looking holistically, looking root causes, but also everything that's covered. And when you go down to that level of thinking, you have to also go down to the other peptides like Farhan mentioned, because yes, eurycomanone is perhaps one of the biggest kind of identifiers of this being from Tonkat Ali, but as we've seen from like the essays that have been done on efficacious Tonkat Ali, there's all these other peptides that you get in specific ones that are sourced good versus not. And we know, as you talked about the spray drying, when you use high heat, that's breaking down peptides as well. Maybe eurycomanone is able to withstand that temperature, like the 200 degrees Fahrenheit, whatever they use. But you have to look at the full spectrum in this sense to get the full amount of benefits. And this is what also bodybuilders are doing with all of their other peptides and stuff that they're using. Even down just to eating protein. I mean, we know that there's specific amino acids and they're in a specific sequence known as peptides. And if you don't have the right amount of each one, then you're not getting the full effect. Like you could take your BCAAs and just have leucine to spark that mTOR pathway to get muscle protein synthesis upregulated. But if you don't have the EAAs, the essential amino acids, it's useless. And that's what a lot of people have found out with their BCAA supplementation. Sure, maybe it tastes good like Kool-Aid or whatever, and you put it in your little bodybuilder sippy cup. But at the end of the day, you're just wasted $40 on BCAAs if you're not getting that full protein. So to bring it back to Tonkat Ali, I think that's the biggest takeaway when it comes to these peptides. Yeah, uricominone's important to kind of spike things or however it works mechanistically. But if you're destroying or missing out on these other peptides, which we probably don't know from the research as well right now, you're still missing out on them, thus missing out on the benefits, thus also probably showing why some studies may not have been as efficacious as others that use Tonkat Ali. So we need to have a standard that actually works and actually provides the results that is processed properly, like you mentioned.